Borderline personality disorder queens. Mary Todd Lincoln, wife of Abraham Lincoln, and possibly Meghan Markle. But before I get into today's video, I'd like to give a shout out to a local business by Dani Gaudiosi. She has an LLC called Makeup and Love, and she's a licensed esthetician where she does luxury bridal makeup. She also does print headshots and other events, and she's based in Delaware, and she does some awesome work, so I highly recommend you check her out, and I'll put her portfolio and some of her work and her website in the description of this video. And also know, what I'm going to talk about in this video, it has nothing to do with Dani. These are only my opinions, not hers. Also, check out my book, Radical Self-Respect, Avoid Falling for the Same BS. Great for people who have struggled with addiction, mental health issues, codependency, people-pleasing, have just had a breakup. Great for any one of those people, so check that out on Amazon. But on to today's video. Borderline personality disorder queens. A lot of today's video I got the information from is an audiobook about the many types of borderline personality disorder women by Christine Ann Lawson. She talks about the borderline waif, the borderline hermit, the borderline queen, and the borderline witch. But today, of course, we're going to be talking about the borderline queens. Now, as I am not a licensed clinician, I will not be diagnosing Miss Meghan Markle, but past licensed clinicians have already diagnosed Mary Todd Lincoln for me. So we're going to talk about her as if she really is a borderline personality disorder queen. And then we're going to talk about the traits of Meghan Markle and compare and contrast Mary Todd Lincoln with Miss Meghan Markle. Now, I think it's important to label these disorders and be able to identify the problem, because until we are able to identify the problem and then admit the problem, admit what it is, we cannot go on the right course of action. We cannot proceed with recovery until you identify exactly what's going on. So I don't share about this stuff to demonize these two women or to just be critical of them. It's supposed to be a cautionary tale where it can maybe benefit others who are dealing with a borderline queen themselves, or perhaps a borderline queen that recognizes this behavior in themselves and then wants to get better because of it, and then they can go into the steps of therapy, etc. So, without further ado, Mary Todd Lincoln, let's talk about her childhood first. And we'll first talk about what a borderline queen's internal landscape is first. So a borderline personality disorder queen, a BPD queen for short, her internal landscape is deprivation, and not enough, because in their childhood they did not get enough love and affection, and there was just never enough. Mary Todd Lincoln, her parents divorced, her mother died in childbirth at the age of 7, and then her father remarried, and Mary Todd Lincoln was one of 9 brothers and sisters, so you could imagine how they might have to compete for a lot of love and attention. Now, Mary Todd Lincoln would often get her father's attention by talking about politics, because politics was one of his favorite topics. She often told her father she would live in the White House one day, and what do you know, she was right. So, another example of borderline personality disorder queens is that they can be very bossy, envious, and intrusive. And this intrusive part we're going to display right now. So when she was 13, Mary Todd Lincoln rode her pony to a famous statesman's house, Henry Clay. And then she knocked on the door, and one of Henry Clay's aides answered the door, and she demanded to see Henry Clay. She wanted Henry Clay to see her pony. And the aide said that no, he's busy. He's in a very important political meeting. But she could not take no for an answer, and she demanded to see him anyway. But what do you know? Henry Clay eventually came out, saw her pony, and then invited her to dinner. Now, Mary Todd Lincoln did not feel any sort of way about this. She did not feel embarrassed about intruding on their dinner or coming over uninvited. No, that intrusiveness did not bother her at all. Because borderline personality disorder queens, they expect special treatment. Now, to compare and contrast to Meghan Markle's childhood, Meghan Markle's parents, they divorced at the age of 6, and she split her time between her mother and her father. And her father was a lighting director on the show Married with Children, and she would spend a lot of time on the set with him there. And it was been said to People magazine by a source that in Meghan's childhood, they had not enough. There was hardly enough to go around, and they really struggled. But despite this, her mother was very giving, and they did a lot of volunteer work to try to help others. And I think this really kind of instilled in Meghan the desire to give back and to help other people, which is an amazing thing to do, of course. Now, moving into adulthood. The adult BPD queen, there's going to be many interesting traits that they have. Some of them are very icky and dark, but some of them can also be bright. So, how do I mean? A borderline queen is sort of like the Queen of Hearts, right? She demands total loyalty of her friends and family. And if you cannot be completely loyal, she'll discard you like a joker in a deck. But other people that she thinks she can use, she uses you like a deck of cards. And that's just how they go. So, during the Civil War, Mary Todd Lincoln, she wanted to do these renovations that would cost $20,000, which in 1800s money is a fortune. And Abraham Lincoln said, I will not allow this to happen because it would stink in the nostrils of the American people for me to approve of these renovations to this old house when our Union soldiers on the front lines cannot even afford blankets. Now, of course, he was correct, but Mary Todd Lincoln just was out of touch with exactly what was going on. Mary Todd Lincoln had lots of expensive dresses. She always wanted to outdress the other political women of the time, and she just never had enough. She always wanted more. She was known for being very stingy. And then after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, she would write these so-called begging letters to congressmen, talking about how she was impoverished and she needed more and more and more. These kind of letters would really embarrass Robert Lincoln, Abraham's and Mary Todd's son. Now, Mary Todd Lincoln, she would invoke in Robert a conflict of loyalty. She would meddle in her son's marriage with his wife. And Robert was very conflicted because borderline queens do not think twice about the loyalty conflicts they create. And we're going to talk about how Meghan did that later too with Prince Harry and Prince William. But Robert Lincoln actually divorced his wife for 18 months because of his mother. And once you cross a borderline queen, they are infuriated with you. Robert did eventually have his mother committed, and she never forgave him for that. She actually threatened to make public Robert's poor investments that he had made because, like I said, once you cross her, she will be very, very, very angry. Now, getting back to Meghan Markle here. So Meghan Markle, as she grows up, she's extremely ambitious. She's on the show Suits, and then she sets her sights on Prince Harry, and she eventually gets engaged to him, becomes a princess, and has a child with him. Now, she knew all the rules of this when she did. Like, she knew what the rules would be, but she still got mad about not being able to defend herself on social media and having to have a lower profile. And a borderline queen wants to be the center of attention. They want to mask the internal landscape they have on the inside, which is emptiness and not enough and deprivation, with the attention, the fame, the fortune, and the admiration of others. And so for Meghan, everything she has is just not quite enough, and so she's always trying to go up and up and up. Now, Mary Todd Lincoln, she was also estranged from all of her sisters. She had discarded them. And this is similar to Meghan Markle here too, where she's estranged from her father and her two half-sisters. Her half-sister, Samantha, has called her a shallow social climber. Now, is she correct? I'm not so sure, but there's a book that Samantha is writing called The Diary of a Princess's Pushy Sister. And Meghan burst into tears upon finding out that her half-sister was writing this book. And that's not really the actions of a person that's going to be innocent. Those are more the actions of someone who's embarrassed about what might be written about them in that book, the actions of a guilty person. But what are these guilty actions? Let's continue. So, Meghan Markle, she knew what the rules were to becoming a member of the royal family, but BPD queens think that rules do not apply to them. Since they were so deprived in childhood, they think they are entitled to take whatever they want. and by any means necessary. They can be extremely bossy, they can be extremely intimidating, and it's very difficult to tell them no. And there'll be a couple examples of this. It's been told to People magazine also that Prince Harry has a hard time telling her no, because it is easier to give in to the borderline queen than it is to tell them no, because they give you hell for it. Mary Todd Lincoln's aides of the White House back in the 1800s, they called Mary Todd Lincoln the Hellcat. And in their journals, they would write things like, the Hellcat is being more Hellcatish than ever. And during Meghan Markle's time, as a royal, 3 aides have quit. Now, where there's smoke, there is more likely fire, and I could imagine that she's been extremely bossy and pushy, and maybe even bitchy with all of them would not surprise me in the slightest. Now, what else has happened? Meghan Markle wanted to wear a certain tiara for her wedding from Queen Elizabeth's wardrobe, but Queen Elizabeth said no, she will wear what I give her, and Meghan Markle had a fit, because again, you can't tell the borderline queen no. The borderline queen never has enough. They always want more. They want to be the center of attention. She wants to be more powerful and noticed than the queen herself. But in that situation, she had to be second fiddle to the queen. She couldn't handle it. So I think that's part of the reason why that she made her and Prince Harry leave, stop becoming a royal, leave being a prince and princess, move to Canada, and try to make independent money. Now, like Mary Todd Lincoln and the conflicts of loyalty with Robert and his wife, Meghan Markle, I don't think she cares at all about the conflict of loyalty that she has instilled in Prince Harry with his brother Prince William. They say that Prince Harry's and Prince William's relationship has just not been the same ever since Meghan Markle came around, and it appears as if Meghan Markle just does not care about this. But, so there's several examples here. Now, there's been a blog that Meghan Markle has written in the past too, and she mentioned about how she really liked her red wine, and she used to be of the variety that as long as it was red, it would do. But then as she grew older, she grew up, and so did her palate, and then she needs special wines now as to read between the lines, and that just seems kind of snobby to me as well. But these are just more issues of exactly what happens between these kinds of people. But so Meghan here, she has the internal landscape of not enough. BPD queens, it's a mirroring personality. So what they want is people to reflect back to them how awesome they are, how amazing they are. Just the same way that a toddler would want reflected back to them in their parents what an amazing person they are as they go and explore, etc. And if a child is missing this, they do not receive this, they try to compensate for this in adulthood by doing these look at me kind of behaviors. How awesome am I? How amazing am I? Now, Meghan Markle seems to do this a little bit with her volunteer work. She's always doing great things to help others, but she's always making sure she points it out. And I think the integrity of doing good works anonymously, I think that is sorely missed in this day and age. That's something Cool Hand Luke did, Paul Newman himself. He donated millions of dollars to charity anonymously, and no one figured it out until after he died, and they looked at his accounting books. But that's something that a BPD queen, that's a lot of the fun for them is getting the admiration and, oh, look how good you are, look how amazing you are. But it's all to mask that internal landscape of deprivation and not enough. And they can be very bossy. And who knows where it will end with Meghan Markle, because I get the feeling that whatever she does, it will not be enough. And when BPD queens have children, they need their children to mirror back to them their likes and interests and needs. And if they don't, the queen can discard them too and just not care about their needs at all. A BPD queen thinks that what's mine is mine, and what's yours is also mine, and what I think and what I want is always most important. My needs are what is most important. And that's just kind of how they live. And I bet you, if you ask Prince Harry this, he would tell you these same things. He probably has a very difficult time saying no. BPD queens choose their partners in life on how easily controllable they are. Now, maybe Mary Todd Lincoln could not control her husband Abraham Lincoln, possibly because of the different era that it was. But I'm pretty sure that Meghan Markle is able to control Prince Harry. And she probably has him wrapped around her little thumb. And he has a difficult time saying no, that's already been published. And he goes with it, and he tries to just get her will done. Even when it means clashing with the queen, even when it means clashing with his brother, even when it means stepping away from your royal duties. So Meghan has removed him, isolated the victim, isolate him from his friends and family. That's a narcissistic and borderline trait right there. Got him in Canada, and now they're going to do their own thing there. So it's a fascinating story here, a cautionary tale to say the least. And I'm sure there's people out there that are going to listen to this and say, wow, I know a woman like that who's very bossy and demanding and feels like she's entitled to everything. And then there's going to be people that are the borderline queen themselves and say, wow, I'm that way. Maybe I should go to counseling or therapy because of it. But that is all I have for you today. I'd be very curious your thoughts on this matter. Do you agree or disagree with this take? Do you think that Meghan Markle might have this disorder? Let me know. I'd be curious. And with that, have a good one.